G'day folks, and welcome to Great Chesterford Junction, and we'll do another update on where I'm at with the I'm just adjusting things here, where I'm at with the block instruments. I was just checking the temperature here outside. It's 34 degrees at the moment, and it's 11:30 daylight saving time, which means it's actually 10:30, so it's going to be a warm one today. Yeah, I think we're pushing near 40 today, so we'll make this brief so I can get back inside into the aircon. The block instruments aren't finished yet, but I can show you sort of part of the process that I've gone through to get to where they are now. One of them is actually complete. I'll show you that one. That's this one here, which is Bamford. So that's all put together now. It's all completely wired up, and it's ready to go. So unfortunately, I've got 3 more of them to do. I've got one wired at the moment. I'll show you that one. Which is this one for Great Chesterford. And you can see, if I just hold it properly, you can see what's inside it. So it's a bit of an effort to get it going. So originally I designed this to use diode protection on sections out here in the workshop, and I cut various isolated sections in preparation for that. And so once I put the first box together and started testing, trouble was I was getting a voltage drop because of the diodes. They were doing exactly what they were supposed to do. I didn't factor in just quite how much drop I was going to get, so it was starting to drive me crazy. And I thought, I can't carry on like this, so I've rewired the system. I can show you a picture of what the wiring initially was like in the block instrument, and now it looks like this. It's much simpler up this end of it. I'm using this switch to switch various sections on the track here. So basically what it is this track out here, which forms a half circle, I suppose. It's got 2 rail brakes on one side, and it's got 2 rail brakes on the other side. Now when the instruments are working together, one instrument will switch on 2 of the rails at its end, and the other instrument will switch on 1 rail. So by keeping 1 rail broken, in effect, we are separating the 2 transformers that control that section. It's very complicated. If you don't understand it, no problem. If you do understand it, could you explain it to me? Anyway, yeah, so that's where we are at the moment. So obviously there's a way to go. I'll just put this back. Like Christmas got in the way, and we've had various family commitments, etc., etc., and now we've just got to this free time where I can sort of really focus on the railway, and of course now it's stinking hot out here. So I was out here early this morning doing a bit, and but I'll go in for the rest of the day and come out later on when it cools off again. So yeah, it's quite epic. To do the wiring, I've made this little jig, which I'll show in photographs and everything. I'll show you how that goes together, and what it does is, this is the same width or depth, if you like, of a box of one of the instruments. So I'll just grab that one I did this morning, and what we do is place it in the jig so that I have the parts opposing each other, and I can use the minimum amount of wiring. See, I've got it in the jig here now. I just tighten that up. I use the minimum amount of wiring to stretch from part to part because it gets quite cozy inside a box, and I can show you a bit of that as well. So yeah, I've got this jig now. I can hold this, just tighten it up, and yeah, it's all ready to go. So yeah, that's coming very handy. It's just 2 bits of wood with 2 wing nuts and bolts, and so I can always know exactly what sort of distance of wire I've got going across there. Well folks, this is early days where we're just starting to put pieces into the boxes to see how everything's going to work out. The back's printed obviously with pin locations, pin numbering, to make the job easier. And I've started working out some other fittings to direct wires to the track, and also the power in, of course. And that's a close-up of the 25 pin connector. And this is an adapted Meccano piece for the top bracket that will go on the boxes. And I've got some standard right angle brackets for the bottom of the boxes. Checking it from the inside there. Just making sure we've got the clearance for everything, that's most important, and then a trial fit with the parts inside to see how we're going. Looks fairly good at the moment. And with the box assembled, you can get an idea of how it will look in position on the side of the railway. There's a number of locations where these things can be put, so I'm just trialling some of the locations here. But the mounting brackets will allow it to be fixed onto the fascia on the front of the railway. Now I'm starting to sort out the holes for the LEDs, all that sort of thing. All those are drilled, and this shows the reason for these black lines here on the display panel. I was asked why those lines were there, and you can see the idea is that they line up with the white line on the knob that rotates. So there's never any doubt as to what position or where the knob is directing its attention to. And they line up fairly well. Now this is the jig that I'd mentioned that I made for the wiring setup, so that I can have the front and the back side of the box set into the jig to hold them securely while I do the wiring. And that's early days, we haven't even started there. So all we've got on is on the right hand side just the 2 bits of the bus, which is 2 bits of rail with solder on top. They're super glued onto the back, of course, and I've used some rail joiners here as connectors because the boxes have to be able to be taken apart but also put together fairly easily, and the way the parts are located in there, for example the relay, the Morse key and the LED on top, all need to be able to be unplugged so that the front and back panel can just slide out as one unit. So that's the reason for those connectors there. So all those things can be unplugged. They're bent over on the back of the panel, super glued in place, and I decided to even fit a black strip on the back of them to hold them more securely. Whoops, we skipped one there. This is looking at the parts inside the box again. You can see there's not a lot of room in there, and that's without wiring. That's the black panel on the left there, which is fitted over the rail joiners just to hold them securely, especially when you're trying to push a fitting onto one of these things from the other side. It's okay pulling, but pushing you risk pushing them out of the back of the box, so that keeps that intact. We've also got a little panel here which describes the use for each pin in the socket and plug. I've also repeated that on the inside of the box so that it'll give me a good idea of what I'm doing whilst I'm wiring. And this diagram of the pin, you'll notice it's reversed. Pin number 1 is on the right hand side here. If you go back, if we can, let's go back, you'll notice that pin number 1 is up on the left hand side here. So I won't have any trouble matching them up when I'm working on the inside of the box. That's a better picture of it. Yeah, so that's the reversed diagram for the inside. What we're doing here is cutting a hole in the case for the relay so that the wire can come through to actually activate the bell. So I won't leave the relays exposed without a case, and I also need the case as part of the mounting process for the relay within the box. It's a generous hole, but you know, you don't want to make it too tight in there. You want it to move freely without any resistance at all. And this is the bracket, which is again an adapted piece of Meccano, and that's how the relay will fit on the inside of the box, and hopefully line up with the hole in the top of the box so that it can move freely. Now the wire that's connected to the relay to the actual, this is the bell ringer. I've just used it, I think it's 0.8 of a millimetre of wire, and I wanted to make a T-piece here so that I could solder that to the actual relay. There's 2 copper strips in the relay, so it's just a matter of drawing out some guidelines on a piece of board and then taping down the 2 pieces so that they line up at a right angle, and then soldering them in place. I then used half a terminal block connector so that I can trim the wire off accurately on each side. So I just slide that on and get the snippers and cut it off whilst it's butted up against the connector there. And this is where I've scraped the copper strips on the relay ready to solder that piece of wire in. So I've added some solder here, and the wire will come across this piece here. That's already soldered on there, and this section here I've used a drop of this resin which is set by activating an ultraviolet LED on it. You shine it on there for 5 to 10 seconds and the resin goes hard. That's the process there. And that's an almost complete relay. It's wired up as well, and it's got its connectors on. The connector up here still has to be soldered onto the wire. The wire actually has to be trimmed off a bit, but then the connector will be soldered on. And here we're working on the wiring for the Morse key. So this is the electrical connection for the Morse key. And on the bracket for the relay Meccano here, I've decided to put a small strip of rubber. It just helps to hold the or grip the relay more securely once you start tightening down the screws on these threads here. So that rubber will be compressed considerably to hold the relay securely. And working on 4 at a time, folks, it's a bit of a challenge to keep an eye on all the parts. There's quite a lot of parts in these block instruments, so I've employed these ice cream containers to keep all the parts for each individual box so that, you know, things don't get lost and all that sort of thing. So you can see I'm trying the relay again, and you can see how it's connected up here, to the connectors. Now that hole that I cut in the relay box so that the wire could move freely through there, one of the guys on platform 1 pointed out that you could expose yourself to allowing dust and debris getting in there. So I came up with this felt pad option. I just cut out a piece of felt, cut a slot in it, and glued that onto the relay box, and it works quite well. It just parts the felt as it moves. Now here we are at the varnishing stage. So I've got a video of how I do the varnishing, so we might have a look at that now. G'day folks, I'm just doing a bit of varnishing here, and the thing with varnishing is that you've got to work fairly quickly. So I've got these pieces set up with screws so that I can stand them up when they're wet and the varnish can dry properly. But I just use a small brush and apply the varnish. This is a stain varnish really quickly, because what that does is gives you time to come back and make any adjustments you need to. And when I do a flat surface like this, I start with the bulk of the material on the brush inside the piece and then work up to the edges, and then gradually try and do it as quickly as possible. You'll notice that it goes dark where I put it on there. It's the stain working its way through the varnish. So the idea is to get this on fairly quickly and try and do nice long strokes when you can, which will give an even finish. So we're not looking too bad here. Now you'll notice that there's a bit of pooling here, so we just do some nice long straight strokes along the grain. That's the way you do it, and that will give you the desired effect. You might get a little bit of darkness near the edges here, so you've just got to work that away and just work it until it looks good. Check where you've been before, just make sure it hasn't run back on there, and then we turn it over to work on the other side. Now what we've got left here is an edge, and we've got to do along there as well. So again, quickly we just get the material on the brush, work it down, nice straight strokes, long strokes, do the other side as well, and then work it with nice long light strokes really. And you can see I've come back onto this side because I've got a bit of dark near the edge there. Now that looks pretty good to me. There's no pooling anywhere and no dark bits, so we'll go with that. Now this piece here is the top piece, and we're not actually varnishing on the inside there. And this is the back, and the back actually, once the box is built, won't really be seen, but we'll give it a go anyway. So I've been doing it all the way through, so I'll just quickly get it on there, and then onto the piece here that'll be seen underneath. And then when we come around to the sides, what I do is get some varnish on the brush and work into the groove first, work it all into the groove, and then pull away following the line of the grain. Pull away from that groove and just work back over anything you've already done. Make sure there's no dark bits. Then we move on to the edge where we've just done. I mean, you don't have to do it in this sequence, but this is just what seems to work for me, and I've got a bit of dark now where I've just done the edge there. So working quickly folks, that's the secret. So you have to have a bit of a plan for each piece. So again, we'll go into the groove first here, and I'm not sure whether you can see that, but yeah, get it on quickly. Do the edge where you've just been, make sure it's all even, nice long light straight strokes, and then we'll come around to this side. There's a bit of pooling in the corner there that we'll have to deal with, and we'll just use that amount that's pooled to spread out over the rest of the piece here. And quickly onto the edge, nice long straight strokes, pulling away again just to get rid of any marks. Have a look, looks okay. Now we're on to the top. Now we'll go back to the back again because that's close to where we started, so that's where it's going to be drying the quickest, where we started. So reasonable amount of varnish is just put on there, but notice I started in the middle and then I'll work up to the edges, so you don't get too much near the edge, because it's much easier to spread it out from the middle than it is from the edge. If at the edge, there's a likelihood it'll run over onto what you've just done, and then you've got to sort of spread it out and make it look good. So long straight strokes. Just working away some dark pieces there. I've got some up the top here. Very lightly just drag them in, even it all out. Have a look at where we've been, make sure nothing's running over. It looks fairly good to me. So far so good. Right, we're good to go with that one. Looks like that. Bit of a shine to it. And this is the last piece, folks. This is the last piece on the fourth box. So it's quite a bit of an epic doing these. I mean, if you were just doing the one, it'd be a doddle, really. And but everything on this project is multiplied by 4. Anyway, it's self-imposed, so I can't complain. I'll complain anyway, but so I hope you're getting the idea of what I'm doing here. This is very glossy, and I'm not a real fan of the gloss look. I prefer more of a satin, softer finish, and so this varnish, once it's dry, it will be rubbed back with some steel wool, as you may have seen me doing in the previous bit, and once I take the shine off it, I will then get some beeswax, which I've got a beeswax cream actually. It's like a furniture polish, but beeswax is ideal, and rub that in to the finish and buff it off, and it will come out superb, even if I do say so myself. So we'll just check where we've been, folks, and we'll just do a little bit of a drag there. Oh no, that's in the grain itself, dark colouring. That'll do. So what I've done here is just use these little screws to put into the holes temporarily to stand the varnished pieces on my bench so that they don't get stuck down to anything. It just keeps them clear of anything whilst they're drying. And some of the pieces I've had to get a bit creative because there's only one screw in these pieces, so that screw is held by my quick clamps just to keep them off the bench. And you can see this piece here, This is after the first coat. This is where I've rubbed it back. There's a considerable difference between that and the final coat there. And so they've had another coat, all these pieces, and that's how they sit on the bench waiting for the final process. G'day folks, I just thought I'd show you a bit of the polishing stage of the cabinets that I'm working on. This piece here has just been rubbed back. There's just a bit of a mark on it there from my hand, but anyway, this has just been rubbed back. You can see it's a fairly flat surface here we've got now. So I've rubbed that back, what would say would be fairly hard, to prepare it for the final stage here, which is applying some beeswax. So I've got it to this stage, so I'll just get myself a soft cloth and some beeswax and literally just rub it on and rub it in hard. This is a beeswax polish. It's actually a furniture polish, but if you can get straight beeswax, it's even better. So you just rub this in hard into the grain all over, and it smells nice too while you're doing it. Over every piece of it. Get a bit more if you need it. Do all the pieces underneath, and you've got all this white cream everywhere. And this is helping to give us a nice sort of satin finish on the piece here from one of the boxes. So you can see I'm rubbing this in very hard and actually taking some of the excess off now with the same cloth. Then we change over to a clean cloth, a soft cloth again, and start rubbing it off, and at the same time buffing it, and buffing it hard. Just work away at it until you got the excess off. I've got a little bit in some of the holes here, which is not really a problem, but we're starting to get this more satin sort of finish. So I'll show you another piece. Right, this is a combination here. That's rubbed back, and that's polished. Makes quite a difference actually. It's quite a nice nice finish. Well, it appeals to me. It wouldn't appeal to everybody. I mean, prior to this I've had a really high gloss on these pieces of timber. However, what I'm looking for here is an old but cared for look. So I want to give the impression that these boxes have got a bit of age to them. So that's why I do it this way. And actually, it's my preferred method. It's just what looks good to me. If I was doing making a piece of furniture or something, or restoring a piece of furniture, I would probably use the same method. However, on furniture I would probably use shellac. Varnish is a much more durable surface, and especially because basically my railway is outdoors in a shed. That's why I use varnish. So I've buffed that within an inch of its life, and that's how it comes up. So this is what I'm working towards. You can see the satin sort of shine on the box there, and yeah, it's just a finish that really appeals to me. As I say, it might not appeal to everybody, but yeah, that's the way we're going. So there we are. So once the instrument is polished, this is how it comes up. So we've got that sort of satin shine to it that I was looking for, and the instrument looks as though it's an antique, I suppose. You can see quite clearly there how the shine comes up. That's the bottom. and that's how it will look when it's on the railway. Now we're into the wiring, and the LEDs have been put in. They're super glued in place, and I've put a couple of pieces of insulation here between the LEDs on the common wire here, just to keep things nice and safe. The resistors are super glued in place as well, and the LEDs just protrude through the panel so that they're fairly obvious when they're on. And this is the early stages of wiring, and you can see how the jig here is helping to sort of determine the length of wire required to go from one side to the other without using too much. We've got a bit more going in now, and we've got the power lead in. This is the one that brings the power up to the bus via a mono plug. And around here, especially over this side, the wire is super glued down, and to cross the void, let's call it the void, to cross the void, the wires are also secured with some cable ties, just to keep things neat and tidy. And that's the final version of version 1 with the diodes here. As I said earlier, I decided to remove the diodes and to go through a different system of wiring. So that's the only thing that's different, is this black and this grey wire. They come out with the diodes, and we wire up the track in a different way. This is the testing stage. Once you put 12 volts power into the back of the box, you can use a bridging wire in the socket, the 25 pin socket, to just determine whether these LEDs are working. And of course they are. That's when the call switch is on. Line clear, line blocked, and train online. Of course these LEDs will be switched from another box. That's why the commutator looks like it's in the wrong position there, but it's not actually. And that's the light on top of the box to indicate that someone's called. Yeah, so I'll show you some other updates that have happened on the railway as well. Let's have a look at them as well. Right, this is all about controllers. Now, I used to have a homemade controller here, and as it turned out, I savaged that one. I sort of took it apart and everything, and decided to use it for a little barred field. So now it's in behind here. So that left a void here. So I got myself one of these CDA throttles, and it's very good. And it's a metal case. It's just a metal case, and I've put a circular magnet on here, and all you have to do is go like that and it holds it. So that's the yard control, or walk around the yard control now. Now sometime after I got that, this controller here decided it didn't want to play anymore, and yeah, I don't know, it only lasted 30 odd years, folks. I don't know, the quality's not there anymore, is it really? So CDA also do a panel mount version of that handheld controller, so I just got it, and it's nearly the perfect size for this. So I just pulled the old one out, got myself a CDA panel mount, and printed up a new overlay for it, put it in there. So you can see it's slightly different. The knob's bigger, it's got a mark on the slider. See, the old ones have got the plastic slide switch. This has got the metal 3-position switch. But basically, folks, pretty much the same thing. The other thing that's new is that I got myself when I went out to buy that CDA handheld controller, the store I went to, which is a local model shop if you like, also has some second-hand British locomotives, so I got myself an N-Class Southern to run on my railway. It's part of a deceased estate, and the guy who owned it before has detailed it fairly well, so I'll show you some pictures of that and some video of it running. And also, just recently, one of the guys on the Platform 1 forum, and he's also a subscriber to this channel, Chris from Canberra, sent me up an old Hornby 00 Coronation Class City of London locomotive to use on my railway, and it was quite surprisingly good because the running is very good. I had the false idea that the flanges were too big on those locos and they wouldn't run on code 100 track, but it actually runs quite well. And so it's had a bit of a service here and a bit of tweaking. I think it probably still needs a bit more tweaking, but I can show you that running as well. It's quite impressive actually. Well folks, that's about all that's new, I think, that's going on the railway. Not a lot really, is there, when you look at it, but anyway, that's the way it goes. Sometimes we get into a bit of a lull, and sometimes we get a spurt on and things get moving. But the way this weather's going at the moment, it's going to slow me down a bit, so I'll have to try and do indoor things. Anyway, you guys take care, and I'll see you next month. Okay, cheers, Gormo.